it's so important to have a goal, and it doesn't have to be a lofty goal. The goal can be, I just want to feel great. I just want to feel love. Like it's so important to have a goal, and then to move forward, insisting on that goal. Now, initially, of course, what you get as feedback is a lot of never going to happen. The pain comes up, the old patterns come up, but having a goal organizes your resources.
Welcome back to the Soul Collective podcast. I am so grateful you're here. Today, I'm joined by an amazing guest, Laura Day. Laura Day is the New York Times bestselling author of Practical Intuition and How to Rule the World from Your Couch, among other books. She is The Independent called her the Psychic of Wall Street. Laura has been featured on Oprah, CNN, Good Morning America, ABC News, and the list goes on and on and on. Laura teaches mainstream professions how to integrate intuition into their process and create greater success. And she teaches people all over the world how to use intuition effectively. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's such an honor to connect with you. I was actually just telling a story about you on a podcast that I was interviewed on yesterday, and it was about synchronicity. And I have your book here, Welcome to Your Crisis. And it's so funny because my best friend, who is now my husband, gave me this book, and he met you at an event that you both were performing at. And he told you nothing about me, and you signed the book. And it was literally at a moment where I had just started my own business, and there was, still a lot of fear. I was also going through a little bit of a personal crisis in that moment. And your message, you wrote just a couple lines and you said, go for your dreams. You're halfway there.
Oh my God. And I never write anything like that. That's so funny.
I know. It was the perfect message. Talk about synchronicity. So yeah, thank you for that.
I have to tell you my favorite synchronicity story, which just happened. So I have a brand new husband. I have had him for 10 years, and as of last Saturday, and he's a screenwriter and a TV writer, but in his former life, he was a journalist. He was the critic at large for Vanity Fair and a New Yorker staff writer. So Demi Moore and her daughter Rumor are at my house for dinner, 2 months ago. And we found ourselves in the city at the same time. And we had these like great dinners in our sweatpants with Rumor playing the piano and singing to us, which was, she's just amazing. And it was a lot of women, 3 women, and my husband, who was, struggling to be significant in this group. Demi and I have known each other since our 20s. I'm 62, so that's a long time. So he comes out with, proudly with his little Vanity Fair magazine. I'm thinking, why is he showing us the copy of when Demi was on the cover pregnant with Scout? Boy, this, yeah. And he's like, look at the cover. So I am so dense. I'm looking at the cover. Demi's not as dense. She goes, oh my God. So in 1990, I guess it was 91 1991, Demi's on the cover, naked, beautiful pregnant belly, which was groundbreaking.
I remember that. Yeah.
And we were friends, and so I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, honey, we know this cover. And Demi goes, look, and I'm looking and I'm not seeing. And she takes her finger and puts it right under my husband's name, which is on the cover. He had written a feature piece for that issue. So here's my best girlfriend and the man who I'm going to marry 30 years later on the same cover. Maybe was it 30 years, 20 years later, on the same cover of the magazine. So then I say, wouldn't it be funny if she introduced us? And of course she didn't, a friend of mine did. Wouldn't it be funny if she introduced us? And all of a sudden I thought, oh my God. So again, 15 years, 20 years ago, maybe, Demi was doing she had just done a movie called G.I. Jane, which if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. And I went with her to the taping, and this is almost 30 years ago now, and to the taping of Good Morning America to promote it. And she's showing Barbara Walters how to do a striptease in a strip club. And by the way, I'm in the middle of a custody battle. I'm going because I'm a good girlfriend, but this is a strip club, and I'm in a custody battle, like not
Right.
well. So I stay up with the producer, and the producer has a son who's a year older than my son. She, 20 years later, introduced me to my husband.
No way.
So it was just, when the wonderful thing, and I make my students document their lives in a certain way, but the wonderful thing when you look back is you can see, I thought I was just making a mess for those 20 years.
Yeah.
But here I was, I planted the seed. I said yes, I planted the seed. And yeah, boy, that was one hell of a slow growing plant. But it finally led me home. And it's wonderful when you look at the interconnectedness of life and you see that it led you home. And yeah, in those 20 years, boy, did I walk into some disastrous relationships that taught me, that got me ready, that broke down so much in me to get me ready for this amazing man who, by the way, when I met him, when my friend Jessica Guff, who was the producer of GMA, who did that segment with Demi, almost 30 years prior, introduced me to him, I'm like, oh no, so not my type. And she goes, why? I said, because I don't know. She goes, no deep-seated pain, doesn't hate his parents, doesn't resent the world, actually has a job and works for a living. What I see, he's really not your type. So, I mean, we need to applaud ourselves for how well we do what we do, because life is tough. Spirituality is a multi-billion-dollar business. And I say this over and over, but if you experience intuition, you realize we are all one energy. The tough stuff is being an I, is negotiating your inner needs, your real life needs, your outer needs, with also the fact that we are one energy and we have a responsibility to each other. But first and foremost, you're here incarnated because you have a responsibility to thrive yourself. And there's so much shaming that goes on around that, but it's so important. You have to interrupt me if you want to get a word in edgewise.
I'm so fascinated by this. So, and I've never heard it explained quite in this way before. And I really love what you're saying. And I think there is that balance between the collective we of like this, we're all in this experience together and we're so deeply interconnected. And yet we are on all so much a personal journey. And so I'd love to ask you about your personal journey and, how you got started. Did you recognize this special gift at a very young age?
So, first of all, it's not a special gift. People who are intuitive to the degree I am, which means I can travel to the future, I can travel inside another person, the one place I was not good at, and I'm better at it after more than 40 years of psychiatry, is being here on Earth. So in a sense, a body was wasted on me. And people like me who are extremely intuitive are so because of trauma. They're that way because of damage, because I needed at 5, I was in an apartment alone with 2 younger siblings and a newborn. I needed to know things that I couldn't possibly know. I needed to be able to do things that I couldn't possibly be able to do. And that's where intuition came in. But people like me sacrifice the development of a lot of things, of real morality, not merging and feeling like one so you do the right thing, but a real, I believe, I will fight for. We sacrifice any sense of self. So I grew up in a very abusive household, and oddly made more abusive because it was a household of privilege where the children were just hungry, beaten, and neglected. And so there was, nobody who would speak out, and nobody who would have listened. So I grew up in this household, and what I was able to do is, at the sacrifice, once again, of growing as a human being, I was able to access the guidance to be able to do what I needed to do to survive. And that's why I'm so big on, hey, humans, our number one job is not to merge and be martyrs. Martyrs are not healthy people. Number one job, survive and thrive. After that, you can be, the Guhu Maharaji Boo Boo and give it all to the world. But first, the first spiritual obligation is for you to thrive. So do that first. So I grow up, and I'm kind of a weird kid. I don't realize that everyone doesn't experience the reality the way I do. So even though now I've been made very popular, I have to tell you that in grade school, telling your teacher that her dead husband, who you aren't supposed to know is even dead, collects grandfather clocks does not make you popular. Going up to someone before their grandmother dies and saying, I'm so sorry, does not make you popular. It makes you creepy. So I was creepy, and it's okay because my household was kind of creepy. Sometimes we didn't have, we'd go to school without socks in winter, and we were odd the way households like ours are. The police would come, break up a fight between my parents. My mother then committed suicide. It was that was my reality. I didn't say, oh, wow, because you don't know a different reality when you're a kid. That was it. I also went to great schools. No one ever bought me the uniform, but I went to great schools, and there were some upsides from being the abused affluent. So I'm 21 years old. I'm a math and science nerd. I went to a school called Stuyvesant in New York, where all the nerds go. And I'm watching a nerd show on TV on extrasensory perception.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, well, why are they studying this? Doesn't everyone do this? And so I call them up, with the ballsiness of a 21-year-old. And I say, well, I can do what you're talking about. And I go in, and you have to picture this. I'm about 85 pounds in a blue pleated skirt and a white buttoned up shirt. My hair is so long, I can, long, straight blonde hair. I look like a Manson girl. I look like Cousin It, where if you turn me upside down, I'm a stick mop, and floor with me. So I walk in, and you can tell the professor is really disappointed. And he starts this long, and he was adorable ultimately, but he starts this long lecture on ESP and remote viewing and telling the future. And I'm like, just put a name in an envelope. So he puts a name in an envelope. And meanwhile, I don't have a pony in this race. I just, this is something to do. I'm completely lost. I'm a 21-year-old with such bad ADHD that I'm not going to get through college. I kind of don't have a home, and I stumble on this. So I puts a name on an envelope, and I basically describe their medical conditions, what's going on in their lives, what's coming up in their futures, what they do for a living. But there are two of them. It ends up he put his first name, who's also his best friend's first name, in an envelope, and I got them both. So immediately I was the freak in residence. And I did it on the agreement that it would be, it would be secret. Nobody would ever know my real name. Or, well, they televised them, not televised, they taped them. And at that time it wasn't videotape even, maybe it was video, I'm not sure. But it's, we're talking about 1982.
Right.
And they televised one without my permission. So I had this instant following. I didn't even have a name for what I did, which is why I tell people, follow your interests, follow the things that pop up, even if they don't fit in your plan. Because here I was, a traumatized, totally out of my body, 22-year-old, 22-year-old really too scattered to be able to retain an education and too traumatized to know how to build a normal life. I mean, I'd never seen it. You know, we were basically kids who raised ourselves. And I mean, I say this not to be dramatic, but I have two siblings who have killed themselves. I mean, we were not raised to be able to get along in the world. And all of a sudden, this thing that should probably have ended me up in a psych ward ends me up as a superstar. And I really didn't have a name for it for a very long time, and I was very secretive about it. But what happened is people saw this, and a lot of crazies got in touch with me, but also drug companies, politicians, the film industry, companies got in touch with me. And because for me that felt safer, I really felt at that age damaged. I saw people going to college and having families who loved them, and I really didn't feel that I wanted to influence people at that point. I felt like I could be harmful. I was, in a way, I'd grown up being weird, and luckily in a very loving world, intuition allowed me to find people who invited me for dinner in the building. I lived in a big apartment building as a child. People would say, "Oh, come to dinner." Not, "We know you don't have any food in the house." Like, it's a loving world if you look for it. So I ended up selecting really business to work with, because I thought business, I'm just one little piece. Whereas in a person's life, I could be the only voice. So that's how my career started. And then when I was pregnant, which is now 10 years after that, I really couldn't travel, and I didn't realize I didn't have to. So I was in once again, synchronicity. I was in a play space, and I'd left my husband when I was pregnant, and and I'd known him since I was 16. So I literally had no skills. I was like, I just had no real life skills. And I mean, we were both kids. He wasn't an older, more mature.
Yeah.
He was 17. I was 16 when we met. He was 21. I was 20 when we got married. Then I got pregnant. I realized, oh my God, I can't raise a child in this environment. Not that I'd been raised in a good one, but I saw, luckily through my work, how normal people lived, and I wanted that for my child. So I left, and I was in a play space. My son was eating sand, and this woman sits down next to me. Her son's eating sand too. And she says, "Oh, what are you working on?" Because I had all these pages, and back then we had pens and paper. Most of you are too young to know what that is. But so I'm basically doing my own work on myself, because I need to find my way. I don't know how to find my way. I'm so at rock bottom. I'm so desperate. I've left my husband. I don't have money. I have a new child. Luckily, the only thing I knew how to do was raise a child, because I did that at 5. So she says, "Let me see." And I'm like, "Oh, no. This is just some stuff I do. I'm just trying to find my way." She goes, "No, let me see." So I show her my pages, which, by the way, was very personal stuff, because I was basically using intuition to predict for myself and find the right way, which is what I'd been teaching companies for a decade. And she said, "This is a book." And I'm like, "No, it isn't." She goes, "I am an agent. This is the book." Ends up, she was a top literary agent. And a couple weeks later, I had an advance for one of the highest advances ever paid to a first-time author. And I made enough to get my apartment back from my husband, to pay my legal bills, to put my son later in private school. Like, it was a miracle. And there's this great quote, miracles are hard work, but it was 10 years of my learning for myself what I did, and then applying it to my own life. So that's really how my career as a writer started, how my career as an intuitive started. And it is also proof for everyone that you can have no skills, only trauma. Because literally, when I was tested, I had no skills. I didn't even remember to eat. I mean, I had no skills. And yet your pathology can become your potential, because with every challenge, there is the strength on the other side that keeps you alive. It doesn't keep everyone alive. I have two siblings that didn't live through it, but there's a strength underneath that. And it is really our job. You know, we encumber our lives so much by saying, oh, you shouldn't be selfish. Well, yeah, you should. Who's going to be selfish for you except for you? It doesn't mean that you have to be selfish at the expense of. Sometimes, yes, but only in emergencies. But you do need to care for yourself. And that's my one real complaint about the self-help industry and the spiritual industry.
Uh-huh.
Is don't give something you don't have to give. Ask for help. You know, the
Mm.
universe is there for you too. It's not just you be a good person and then you receive. No, if you need to receive, you need to demand. And if you're not demanding loud enough, you need to find a way to have a bigger metaphoric voice, which is what The Circle, my fourth book, is about. How do you scream, I need help, help? And how do you do it in a way that the universe, that the world hears you?
Yeah, and that's what I love about your work so much is that you really find practical ways to teach people how to cultivate their own intuition. You know, Welcome to Your Crisis is such a great example of that. And something that you said like really strikes a chord is just that like when we're in the midst of crisis, it's hard to really think intuitively. Like sometimes it's hard to see the synchronicity in the crisis, but yet there's so much blessing, like you said, in the pain going through those challenging moments on the other side. And so I'm just curious to ask you, like, what are some ways that you recommend people to get in touch with their own intuition?
Well, first of all, it's so important to have a goal. And it doesn't have to be a lofty goal. The goal can be, I just want to feel great. I just want to feel love. Like it's so important to have a goal and then to move forward, insisting on that goal. Now, initially, of course, what you get as feedback is a lot of never going to happen. You know, the pain comes up, the old patterns come up. But having a goal organizes your resources. And one goal, because the minute you split attention, you split power. So it almost doesn't matter what your goal is, as long as it's something that you want desperately. Because if you don't want it desperately, the subconscious doesn't get on board. And studies have shown that the subconscious makes 87% of our decisions 7 seconds before the conscious mind is aware of it. So before I touched my forehead, 7 seconds before, my subconscious had already decided on that gesture. So it's so important to have a goal that you desperately want, so your subconscious is engaged. You know, not be more organized, be a better person. You know, what is it you want? If it's a car, let it be a car. If it's great sex, let it be great sex. Whatever that goal is, you know, suspend judgment long enough to really find your power. Then you can save the world, but find your own power first. So have a goal. The most dangerous thing you can do is to stop wishing. Goals organize your intellect, your intuition, and your subconscious. Then, and this sounds simple, but as many of you, if you really think of just today, know, put one foot in front of the other. Move toward that goal, not just energetically. You know, we use all these words like manifestation. Manifestation is making something happen. That's all it is. I put water in the freezer, I manifest an ice cube. You know, it is making something happen. We make something happen by engaging with the universe. What's the universe? Your environment. And the environments outside of what you see as your environment that is helpful. So move forward. As you move forward, something very dynamic happens, which is in order to move forward, your subconscious offers you patterns that get in your way because you can't move forward if you don't deal with those patterns. Also, when you move forward toward a goal, your receptors, your intuitive receptors, which are your 5 senses, they're no different. You know, an angel doesn't come with the wings and everything. It's you smell, taste, feel, hear, and know, see, and think what it is that's going to happen. You have that awareness. So what happens is you open those receptors to possibilities and obstacles to your goal. And all of a sudden, intuition, which is not about going Zen, intuition's your warrior. Intuition saves your life. Intuition all of a sudden says, hey, look over there. Hey, you're not looking. Hey, you're looking here. Hey. And it points you unerringly in the direction of success. But going back to that goal, here's the problem. Most of us are intuitive in two areas, our area of expertise and our area of neurotic preoccupation. So you've got to,
What do you mean by that?
I mean, you have got to, if you really believe that you will never find love, your intuition will help you verify that.
So true.
Love will be right here, but your intuition will say, oh no, that's not free, not yours. Nah, that's not you. Nah, has a beard, not interested. Nah, like it did for me when I met my amazing husband, who my viewers know as my delicious husband, So it is really important to train intuition. We train intellect our entire lives. We train emotion our entire lives. Intuition should be repressed as children because you don't want a child in someone's body or in a war zone or in a traumatic event that they see on the news. You want them to, we are filters for our children because they have none. But then when you have ego strength, you can open up that intuition. So have a goal, keep on moving toward it, and do practical things. Your goal is to find a job. Yeah, be in that goal, allow your intuition to help, but also call friends, send out resumes, look at that, and notice what comes in from left field. At 21, I didn't know what a psychic was. If I hadn't just responded to something that grabbed my interest out of the blue, I would never have had a career.
Yeah. Did you have like an intuitive sense when you started, when you were getting started, that you would have this rise to fame? And
no, not at all. I thought at 21, I thought I was completely worthless because nobody had loved me. I thought I was worthless. No, I was not an excellent student. I wasn't beautiful. I was nothing on the checklist. I didn't think about what I would have or what I would be. It was really about surviving. And I was lucky because now I would much rather have had the challenges in those first 20 odd years than have them now. I mean, now my life is a gift from the challenges that I confronted, and intuition did help. I mean, I did have a cheat. It wasn't strength of character, it wasn't good luck. I had a cheat, and the cheat was that my brain was so fragmented that I didn't think. Intuition, I had the drive to survive that we all have. And intuition basically pointed, do this, meet this person. Even my marriage, which wasn't, for many people would probably not have been the right marriage, it helped me survive until I could stand on my own. I had to give up a lot for it, but it was a gift, even though from the outside perhaps didn't look like one. So no, and everyone has this ability, this intuitive ability, and it when you make a wish and when you go for it.
Do you think that people that are, like very in the sort of strategic or linear part of their brain have a harder time cultivating their intuition?
Just the opposite. Actually, intuition is just about retrieving data. Okay. So very emotional, creative people tend to be less intuitive than, like, if you're at a dinner of traders, market traders, everyone's a little on the spectrum and they're brilliant intuitives because it doesn't get all icked up and gummed up by feeling and by hoping and by wishing. It's just data that's responded to. It's very clean. So no, I find that my best students are mathematicians, scientists, traders, successful soldiers who are still alive and uninjured, people who are in that very clean, rational, categorized kinds of crafts. My worst students are actors, for example.
Really?
Because most of them are so amazingly, richly feeling and creative. But there's no compartmentalization. I mean, being intuitive does not guarantee success. There's a reason why the archetype of the intuitive is some starving person dressed in purple in a fifth floor cat pee smelling walk up. And it's because knowing and being able to use what you know are two opposite ends of the spectrum. So in a sense, I'm very lucky that I can make a living with what I see. And I have a very, mathematical, somewhat compartmentalized, dissociative brain. But I'm lucky I can make a living because I can't cross a street without someone holding my hand. I mean, people are good drivers or I would have been hit. I'm not oriented in the world, although I work very hard on it. I work very hard on things like remembering to eat, or knowing what year it is. I actually had a request of my husband. I guess 6 years ago now, I wanted a full neuropsych evaluation because I said, at my age now, if I fall and I am hospitalized and nobody's around and they ask me what year it is, they're going to think I'm demented. I'm not demented. My brain was this way at 11.
Yeah.
So I got a neuropsych eval that really shows, yes, she's not demented. And no, she's not oriented in time and space. And I have it on my phone under an emergency, the emergency information, because it's a deficit. So what I do is I train people who already have egos, who are stronger in that sense, although they judge themselves for it, to then use their intuition to be successful.
I'm so fascinated by the path that you took because I feel like you went and started working with these large, corporations in the market and combined intuition and business. And I feel like that's such a unique combination. I think we're seeing it more and more, and it'll become such a, vital, integral part of business. But how was that in the beginning? Like, was there any, sort of like rejection of embracing intuition? And like, what was the most interesting part of?
First of all, intuition doesn't even exist. The way I got my clients is there was some interest. There was always someone in a company who was interested. And I did a lot of pro bono work. I mean, AIDS was new on the scene and I worked with an AIDS researcher. I mean, there were untouchable areas that were open to anything because, doctors wanted to save people. Drug companies wanted to come up with a solution. And so I didn't ever call myself a psychic, really. I didn't ever name myself. But, when people would be exposed to me, what I would do is, and I try not to do this anymore because it's actually rude, are called what I call parlor tricks. So walk up to someone and say, oh, gee, you're taking yourself public in a few months, aren't you? And the person would, what do you mean by that? Like, I'm not supposed to know that. How did I know they were taking the company public? Or, a steroid might help that drug work better. How did they know? So the advantage I had was that rude ability to be able to just pull something out of thin air that was true. The other advantage I had is that I was not, and am still not, a believer of working too far outside of whatever the structure is. So I would never tell, I never, for example, I never did medical intuition for people. I would offer myself and be very willing to prove myself. And there was research on me, which was an advantage. But I would offer myself as someone to work with doctors on their patients. And a lot of this I did for free because there wasn't a market yet. Business I didn't do for free. Business, all I had to do is show them that I could give them an edge and I was hired. Medicine, they really wanted research. They wanted to see, okay, can we trust her with our patients? Is she going to tell this diabetic not to take their insulin, which, by the way, I've heard people do? or is she trustworthy to work within what we believe works? And so I never had resistance from the business community or the medical community. And we don't realize this, but film and TV is a business community. That's a business. So I never had resistance because I never claimed to be perfect. I said, I can make a mistake, so don't throw out your judgment. I worked with the existing systems and not against them. I think it did help that I am the epitome of the straight white woman. It certainly helped in the 80s, white shirt, blue blazer, little pleated skirt, low heel pumps, I wasn't threatening. I fit, didn't even wear bigger earrings back then, like little pearls. I'm naturally very uptight, and that worked for me. My youth worked against me, so I did get some rudeness, and I just kind of let it be water off a duck's back. So in the 80s, there wasn't even language for what I do. But people thought I was a freak, and it worked. And I was a nice, well-mannered freak who you could take to a meeting or a dinner party, and I wouldn't stand out. So that worked. And then when I wrote a book about intuition, which was a decade later, that's when I got more of the rude stuff, like prove it to me. It's like, why would I prove it to you? I'm $10,000 an hour. Why would I prove it to you at a dinner party? I wouldn't even take you as a client. You're rude.
Right.
I think that one of the problems with being outside in any way is that we're asked to prove ourselves. Like, excuse me, a man of color should not have to prove himself not dangerous.
Right.
A intuitive should not have to prove herself not a weirdo. You don't want to sit with him or me, don't sit with us. But why are we? So I never did that. I never did parlor tricks. And actually, you can see on my old press tape, some show like 30 years ago, where some guy hands me a box and says, I don't know what's in it. My producer made this. Tell me what's in the box. I'm like, you tell me. I've been tested by major universities. I know I can do it. My soapbox is that you can do it. So I said, you tell me. He actually did a better reading. I got a clay figure. He got a porcelain figurine. It was a porcelain figurine.
Wow.
He actually did a better reading on air than I did. Total not believer, totally rude. He was so dismissive and rude. I just kind of politely turned the tables. And in my workshops, often students want to make me Guhu Maharaji Day. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do a reading for you. You do a reading for me. See what you have, because you've got something. So yes, the landscape has changed a lot. And I'm kind of the grandmother of intuition, because I took it out of the past life spirit guide, burn sage thing. Not that all of that isn't wonderful, but I took it out of that, which I didn't even know existed at 21, to be honest, and into, hey, I can predict the future of a market, so I can make your company more competitive. And that's, my first job was predicting currency markets back before the euro.
When you were doing that work,
long ago.
Yeah. When you were doing that work, I know you were helping with jury selection, police cases, medical intuition at that time. What was your favorite thing to do?
Definitely not missing people. That was always devastating. What was my favorite thing? I think my favorite thing has always been working with doctors and working with drug companies in creating new solutions. I'm from a family of physicians, and going back 3 generations, my great-grandfather's last words were, "Take the scalpel, I joke you not." So I really love things that alleviate human suffering. And the body is so interesting, because the body is a predictable system that behaves unpredictably.
Yeah.
So that's really my favorite. Business is the easiest, because it's the most grounded. When you work with a company, if you're wrong, they fire you. So you're not crazy, which is always my yardstick. for my life. Am I crazy? Have I crossed the cuckoo line? You know, so I love with companies because they'll fire you.
Yeah.
Whereas people unfortunately believe anything.
Yeah, well, I'm curious about that because you do have like a very practical, grounded side. Is there anything like really woo-woo or out there that you're into?
Oh my God. Everything, I believe in everything 10%. So,
That's such a
and
good.
I train intuitives for business because I've had the same companies for 30 years. The only people I read are my students. Once they're in boot camp, I read them for free. I mean, those are the only civilians are the people who are training to do this. But I've read the same, I've had the same clients. I don't take new clients. So I'm training intuitives for business. I'm training doctors to use intuition more effectively. I'm training CEOs. I really love teaching. I totally forgot your question.
The woo-woo stuff. You said you believe in
Oh,
everything like 10%.
so, so I do, because it's so funny that you're asking that question, because my last crop of trainees, which I just finished training, for some reason, because I'll give people referrals of people I've trained, I had a lot of people asking for mediums, past lives, spirit, you know, all this stuff that I will do for my girlfriends. I'll do it for my advanced students. I do not do it in the, it's not, I don't do it professionally in the world. But I thought, okay, I'm going to train this group of people to respond to those requests. And I did, and they were wonderful. Um, I don't lead with it because I think that that has always existed as a market and as a belief system. Intuition, the way I train it, even in terms of things like dead people, intuition is a tool. It's not a belief. If you have to believe in something, it may not really work. Intuition's a tool. So even in those areas, I teach them to get verifiable information so they know that they're psychic and not psychotic. But so, and I use some of it in my own life, you know, since, you know, suicide is the #1 sport, unfortunately, in my family. I spend 5 minutes a day, sit down, let them all make their requests, argue if I need to argue. You know, if you're worried about your kid cutting school, maybe you shouldn't have killed yourself, you know, but I've got a busy day today, so she's just going to cut, like I'll have these that
Oh, wow.
a little crazy from the outside, but then I don't, because I'll tell you something, and this is my most important message, both as an intuitive, somebody who does recreate reality for people, and written 6 books on teaching you how to do so. But this is my most important message. Your power is in the here and now. Your power is in this moment. In this moment, you reframe the past and make it useful for you. No matter how awful it was, take what you need and let the rest of it go. You know, make it useful, reframe it, make yourself the hero of your own story. You are always predicting the future, but if you're not in the present, you can't do anything about it. So be in the present, have your goal. That future is going to lead you. It's going to do that thing where it says, look, look, look. So be in the present. And by the way, we don't do that well. A lot of people are studying mindfulness. I'm not a meditator. I'd rather slit my wrists, but it's very useful for a lot of people. And I do use the concepts of mindfulness. I really try to remind myself, oh, wait, yeah, the past is comfy because a lot of people I love exist there. And maybe parts of me, you know, young me, hopeful me, whatever exists there. But the present is where I can bring those things in my life. And by the way, if I'm not in the present, how can I do things now to create a better future? Because there are lots of different futures. Nothing's written in stone, whether you're, and I see this with companies, by the way, where a company, you know, companies are like people. They fall in love with their history. They fall in love with their ideas. They fall in love with whatever their thing about themselves is. And sometimes you have to say, you know, I know you believe the industry is going this way, but you will see in about 3 weeks, it's not. And if I were you, this is a possibility I might want to consider. And it's totally out of the box for them, you know, because we're all in our own box, which is why on my Instagram, I have people read each other. But yes, I do weird. There's my little altar. I'll show you my little altar. There's my little altar over there.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Love
I do. I do weird, but I try to do my weird privately.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
thanks for sharing that.
my advanced students who already I've pummeled into, I want data, you have to be able to prove it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now we'll talk to dead people.
Laura, how can people learn more about your work? And is your mentorship group open?
Yes, I do a whole bunch of different things. I do a professional training a couple times a year, which is really very, very intense. And it's for people who want to use intuition in their own lives more effectively or in their companies, or people who want to be practicing intuitives. It's not esoteric. If you want to do past lives and dead people, not my group. Um, I do a lot, since COVID struck, I do a lot of free workshops. So on Instagram, which is Laura Day Intuit, I do classes all the time, and people, trained intuitives, will give you readings and will help facilitate your giving readings back, because that's the way I see if my students who are now professionals are still on target. So that's the place that I evaluate their work and I send them their business. So there's a lot of great free help and guidance there. And also healing. We do a lot of healing, and healing we haven't talked about, but it's just, directing your intention to change the physical world, whether it's a body or a dynamic of how you're earning a living or a relationship. And we work with the circle, which is my fourth book, which is really a process of how do you create. So it's all on Facebook, Instagram, lauraday.com. If you Google me, there's lots of malicious gossip, but there's also my website. I'm the only one who reads my emails, because people email me it's a privilege to read people's emails at such difficult times in their life. But it means I can't have an assistant read them. So make any email short. I read and respond to every single email. So lauraday.com, and sign up for the newsletter, because there are lots of free events, and we do healing raves where we really just hand our problems over. We get in touch with the truth, which is we are all one energy. And we're evolving each other by our own personal struggles, whether that struggle is your effort to buy a new car, or, deal with your breast size, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. That's just your image for the struggle. That's just your symbol. Your struggle counts, and it's for all of us. And so it's really helpful to do what we call healing raves, where you hand your struggle over and you say, okay, for 10 minutes, you take this burden, because I'm doing it in an old way. It's not working. You take it and heal it. So it's a great group of people.
Yes, that sounds amazing. We will link to all of that. And I just want to honor you. Thank you so much for being here. It's been amazing listening to your journey, and just the way that you're using and teaching people how to do that is so, so powerful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emily, because, so few people actually put the work in to researching somebody they interview, and you really spend such time and energy on it, and it shows in just the energy of what you bring out. So thank you. Like, that's a real team player, circle thing to do.
Awesome. Yes, I love that. Thank you. That's a great compliment to me.